And the LACPR is...
do me a favor. Could you say senator instead of ma'am? It's just the thing. I worked so hard to get that title, so I appreciate it. Yes, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I know for a fact that Barbara Boxer has seen that video, and she doesn't like it. She has complained about my videos to her supporters, saying that, quote, every time she turns around, Chuck Devore has a new attack video against her. Can you all say with me, So let me leave you with a promise. Again, I'm not sure how much time we have together. It's getting late and you've been sitting down for a long time. But let me promise you this one thing. When we debate Barbara Boxer, I intend to call her ma'am every chance I get. And I figure in the middle of the debate, she says, don't call me ma'am, call me senator, I worked hard for that title. I'm kind of thinking that maybe my reply should be, well then, senator, you can call me colonel, because I worked a hell of a lot harder for that title than even Israel. Maybe it'll go over, maybe not. How much more time do we have?
Okay, we have the room until 9 o'clock. However, we have to collect all of the chairs.
I'm at your disposal.
And, well, you're at their disposal.
Yes, I am.
That's the only thing that we must do is actually put the room back together.
Okay, so then let's take, what, 4 more questions or so? Will that leave us enough time to read this
And I have
up?
one for you as far as the National Guard.
Yes.
My big concern, because of the fact that China right now is building a deep water port with the help of Mexico, that we are indebted up to our eyeballs.
Yes.
We have 2 wars going on,
Yes.
and we do not have a citizen militia here in the United States in the event that we are attacked. Would you bring our National Guardsmen home?
All right. Let me say that I agree with the premise of your question, but disagree with bringing them home. And let me explain why. I agree with the premise. First of all, if you look at the National Guard in the country, only about 20% of them are currently deployed, not the majority of them. Okay? But here's why I agree with the premise of your question. When Barack Obama called for 30,000 new troops in Afghanistan, which essentially was splitting the difference between what the general initially asked for, which was not 40, it was 60,000. So he split the difference between what the general wanted and what the MoveOn.org netroots far left crowd wanted. Okay? It's hard for me to compete over people if they're going to talk here. So he split the difference. And I don't believe the temporary surge in Afghanistan is going to accomplish its objectives. And I don't believe it will, because what's going to happen is the Taliban will simply pull back, preserve its forces, and then cause mischief when we leave. Because the president said we'd start drawing down. So here's my concern, and this goes to your question. And I wrote a piece in the Washington Times that was published in the last 2 weeks that addressed exactly what you're talking about. Here's what I wrote. We are currently spending 4.9% of GDP, gross domestic product, on defense. That compares to 6% when I worked for President Reagan in the Pentagon for Capital Weinberger as a White House appointee. So 4.9 then, 6% now. Not a huge, or 6% then, 4.9 now. Not a huge difference. It could be higher, but it's not a huge difference. Here's what's different, and here's where I agree with you and am very concerned. In 1986, when I started work for Capital Weinberger in the Pentagon, 45% of our defense dollars went to research and development and procurement, buying new state-of-the-art equipment so that if there ever was a war against a serious adversary, that we could win it on our terms. 50% of the budget at that time went to operations and support. 45% and 50%. That was the ratio. Today, At this time, even though we're spending a little less of our GDP on defense, we're only spending 30% on acquisition and research and development, and we're spending 65% on operations. So what that means is as a percentage of our national wealth, if you run the math, it means we're spending about half of what we did spend when I worked for President Reagan. We're spending about half of our national wealth on creating new tools to defend freedom and keeping ahead of our enemies. This is what extremely concerns me, in addition to the fact that I think the National Guard is getting a bit worn out from the constant deployments. So what do I propose that we do? Well, this may be a little controversial for some of you in this audience, okay? But first of all, I don't think we should be treating terrorists like criminal suspects. Soldiers have any business reading Miranda rights. I don't think it's a wise idea to bring terrorists who are trying to kill us to federal court in America and try them with the defense attorneys that you're paying for. Now, here's where we may have some disagreements. I have been a consistent critic of the drive to get involved in nation building going back to the first Bush administration. I've actually put them to paper and criticized. So maybe I wasn't a good Republican by saying that we ought not be trying to make countries into miniature versions of the United States in open-ended commitments, trying to make fertile ground that is not yet fertile for democracy and freedom and rule of law. It's a noble task, no doubt, but it's a costly task. And I don't see it as part of my oath to the Constitution. As much as I like the people and the lands that I've been deployed to, as much as I love them, protecting them and helping them have a better life like us is not part of my oath of office.
That's right.
So here's what I think we should be doing in Afghanistan. Now, President Bush actually did it for the first several years and was getting criticized by the left because they said, well, look, you put all these forces in Iraq, so you're not doing in Afghanistan what you should have done. Ladies and gentlemen, Iraq is not Afghanistan. Not even close. It's a far bigger country, Afghanistan. Far more illiterate, far more tribal, far more xenophobic, far more fractured. It's landlocked. They have no national industry other than generating opium and foreign aid. We're building an army in Afghanistan, much like the army that we built in South Vietnam, that cannot be sustained with the economy of the country. We're setting it up for failure. And so what I think we should do is continue the emphasis that we had at the start with special operators, human intelligence, drones, because I don't see our open-ended task there as doable, not for 100 years. See, I don't believe that our task should be to try to make Afghanistan into some 51st state of America. I think the task of our military is very simple. Kill the enemy!